Good morning, and thank you, Bas, for being here. I'd like to post some questions. The first is, could you briefly introduce yourself and give us a short overview of your activity as an innovator, please?
Thank you, Giordana. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. So my name is Bas Boorsma. I'm from the Netherlands, and I have been active in what you could call the smart city space for close to 20 years. That's a very long time, I think, and I always like to joke that that is such an incredible long time that at this particular point, I no longer know what a smart city is supposed to mean. It's come to mean so many different things. But as an urban innovator, I covered broadband deployments in the early years, lots of pilots throughout the world around the Internet of Things. And as of recent, really engagements with city leaders across the globe for educational purposes, but also for in the actual engagements in territories, cities, even villages, where it comes to an urban innovation agenda. And yes, technology continues to be an important component to that, but not just technology, also new types of governance, citizen engagements, ideas, projects, policies around inclusion. And that keeps me busy pretty much across the world. Predominantly in my day-to-day affairs, I'm professor of practice at Thunderbird School of Global Management, Arizona State University, again, in the field of urban innovation and smart cities. And I carry a number of other positions, including board member to the Smart City Association Italy.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. And I'd like to ask you also if you can describe the importance of an ecosystem approach in the development of smart city territories and in a specific of smart mobility.
So let me break that down in two questions, because the mobility question actually produces a whole fresh set of questions. So first of all, the relevance of an ecosystem approach. Jordana, I think it is very clear that anyone that stands in embrace of a large innovation strategy for a city or an entire territory needs to understand that no one is going to do this alone. Government cannot do this alone. Private sector cannot do this alone. Now, one of the major challenges of the past 10, 15 years of smart city efforts is that there was a sense among a lot of private sector players and big technology companies that they could do it. They will be able to manage a city. They will be able to manage a territory and do a better job than government. Look and behold, they have not been able to demonstrate that they can. In fact, government is probably best equipped to do the role that they have always had. However, they too need partnerships. They need genuine partnerships. They need public-private partnerships of a new style, not the old one, but a new style, which is dynamic, agile, and stands in respect of the different strengths within government circles and in private sector circles. These need to be brought together. But also, it would be a mistake to think that big enterprise alone will be enough from a private sector involvement perspective. Big players are very important. They can provide investments, staying power, scale, replicability. They can publish things, push things. But many of the radical innovations, the truly innovative stuff, does not come from big enterprise. It may very easily come from startups that are hyper-local. So you need to really establish that ecosystem that gets all of that. Public sector, private sector, large and small. Now, let's not forget academia and, last but not least, citizens. If you do not bring citizens into your game, then what are you doing it for? If you have missed out on listening to their voices and what is actually going to be needed in a community, then still your partnership may not work very well. So this is the importance for any, whether it's mobility or energy or smart retail in inner cities. I mean, whatever the plan is, you need this type of public-private collaboration that involves all of these stakeholders. Now, that's to one part of your question. Now, the other part of the question is mobility. Here, again, it becomes even more clear that you cannot do this alone. If it comes to the technologies, the standards, the best and most innovative in terms of mobility solutions, this is not going to come from government. It is going to come from private sector. However, there is a clear tendency within private sector, especially when a market is young, to have walled gardens around their products. I am company A, I have this product, and A can only talk to other things made by A, and it will not talk to B. So for instance, you can have an electronic vehicle charger system, but if that only talks to an X amount of cars, or it can only talk to one energy grid in one jurisdiction within the territory, then that's a terrible thing, because a lot of people are going to suffer from the fact that they cannot use that particular appliance. So here government comes in, public sector comes in, because they need to set the rules on interoperability, ensuring that the solutions that are being deployed for the entire territory all work together. Because if it doesn't work together, it's going to be a failure for the communities, and it's going to be a failure for our citizens. So government has to step up and say, this is what we want, and this is how it needs to be interoperable. And this, where possible, this is where we want to create standards. So this is where public-private partnerships are so very much needed in terms of mobility. But there's also another aspect. This is where government needs to be pushed a little bit. What you can very clearly see is if you work with, let's say, 20 jurisdictions in a larger territory, there will always be cities or communities where you have the local mobility department leader saying, yeah, but I just need 20 buses, public transport buses. Why do I need all of this? There is always going to be people that are going to be firmly rooted in the 20th century, not in the 21st century. There's going to be to be made an effort that comes out of public-private collaboration, where people can acquaint themselves with some of the best of innovations that are going to revolutionize how they think of mobility. Yes, that procurement manager in that city that needs to procure new buses, by actually understanding what is happening in the market, by understanding what's possible today, their eyes open and they can see what is relevant to them. So this too is a very important aspect as to how you can learn from each other in such a public-private collaboration, in such a ecosystem approach when it comes to mobility. Last point with mobility is there are so many market players. If you agree, let's say if you're going to build concrete roads, and in the end you can agree with one company and they will build your roads. Period. You don't need to talk to all the other companies. Once you've procured properly, it's fine. But when it comes to a smart mobility strategy for an entire territory, you cannot say we're just going to talk to Renault and to Fiat. You cannot. You have to actually create an environment which is open to all. If we're going to create, let's imagine that you're going to create a vehicle-to-vehicle communications protocol so that the cars can talk to each other. You cannot create a communications protocol that, yes, will talk to Renault and Fiat, but will not talk to Tesla and Audi. You have to create an environment where all of these players actually come together and agree on these interoperability measures and standards. By definition, you need an open ecosystem approach around all of this for this to fly, for it to result in an environment that's truly interoperable, and that produces, quite frankly, a fair market to all of these different competing market players. The only way to do that is through a larger ecosystem approach.